7 minutes. Now, we have talked a lot about smartphone use amongst young people here on Breakfast over the last few months. And Barnet, the London Borough of Barnet, is claiming it's going to be the UK's first smartphone-free borough from September, with all schools in the area banning phone use during the school day. So let's now speak to Claire Fernie-Huff from Smartphone Free Childhood. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Could you just talk us through this plan, please, and how were you involved in this?
Yes, so under this plan, 126 schools will be going smartphone free. That's 103 primary schools who were saying your schools are completely smartphone free. And from September, secondary schools, children will not be allowed to bring smartphones to school. And this initiative was led by our North London leader, Nova Eden, and she's been working tirelessly with schools to bring them together. And this is the result. And it's just an incredible, really inspiring example of collective action of what can happen when schools all work together and also work with parents. So yeah, it's really, really exciting, very exciting day for school children in Barnet. You know, we know that actually smartphones in schools just don't really mix very well. They're incredibly addictive. They have a whole range of impacts for children at school. So yeah, really, really exciting to see this, and such a change that's going to happen from September.
I do wonder, how hard was this, Claire, to bring all of these people together and all these institutions as well to be aligned with something like this?
I think, we're very inspired by the work that Nova's been doing. She's been incredibly persistent bringing people together, because of course it's going to be hard to unite everyone on this. But, what she's found, that actually there were very, very few schools who didn't want this. She felt that she was really pushing it an open door, because when you present the message and you talk about, what smartphones do, how they steal our attention, and we think about that in a school setting, it is a bit of a no-brainer. So, whilst it's incredible how she's brought people together, actually the message, I think, is so powerful. We know that most teachers do not want smartphones in schools. It's just they feel like it's a really hard issue to tackle. And we also know that parents don't want smartphones in schools. Even the kids, when the smartphones are taken away, often say, thank you, we feel much less stressed and less distracted now. So, I think it's that message that actually we can all get behind quite quickly. And this is just an example of that.
You almost think, with where we are in society, the horse has really bolted, hasn't it? Is it realistic to completely ban smartphones from schools? They're so integral to teenagers' lives. They do so many things with their phones and have been, use them for homework, for example, for timetables, for checking, for directions, for keeping in touch with parents.
Absolutely. But I think we need to collectively take a step back and go, is that what we want? Of course, smartphones have a range of really positive things as well. And we're certainly not anti-technology. But what we do know is that when children just had simple phones, we didn't see that huge spike in mental health problems that we are now seeing. We can track that. There is a spike just when children started trading in their flip phones and getting smartphones. That's when we see there's a huge spike in things like anxiety, depression, loneliness, suicide ideation. So whilst they do have benefits, that now is the time to all, take a step back and say, is this what we really, really want? Could we just delay for a little bit longer? As part of our campaign, Smartphone Free Childhood, we are empowering parents to delay till at least the end of year 9. And, nearly 100,000 parents have come together to sign a pact to say that they're going to do that. Because, our argument is, there's time to have a smartphone later on. But when children have a developing brain, they're very susceptible to these devices that are designed to be addicted. They're designed to pull us in. They are essentially the biggest distraction device ever invented. And then we're asking them to have them in their bags at school and focus on their lessons. It's just not feasible. And we also need to remember that a simple phone is also a communication device. I think that's what we've forgotten here. Children can text and call each other on a simple brick phone. They don't need to be on WhatsApp groups with hundreds and hundreds of people. They need a few good friends and they need to be able to contact them. And to us, that is absolutely plenty.
Did you see that study, maybe at the start of this month, actually, just maybe last week, in fact, about smartphone bans in schools? It did lead to a slight decrease in students using phones, but it didn't necessarily have impact on the study. So what is that about? There isn't necessarily the impact that people speak about.
Yeah, and I think that study was really interesting because when you looked at there were 20 schools that said they had a ban. But actually, when you really looked at it, only 4 had a proper ban. The rest of them had essentially, they had their phones on them. And that's the case for about 90% of schools in this country. They do not have an effective ban. They have a no see, no hear policy. And the problem with that is that it puts way too much burden on the children. It's essentially saying, have this really, really addictive device, but just make sure you don't use it during lessons. And we know that that doesn't work. And teachers in our community are constantly telling us that, they are seeing phones out most of the time when they've got that sort of policy. So I think that's a real flaw with the study. And I think it just talks about the wider issue that we need to actually be really serious about making schools properly smartphone free, which means that they absolutely do not have access to the phones in the school day at all, either by handing them in, putting them in a locker, or even better, not being able to bring them at all, which is what this policy is doing. And I think what's really powerful about this policy is that it's also nudging parental behaviour, because it's saying, actually, no, you don't really need to buy your child a smartphone, because we know from our community almost all parents would rather not. They just do it because everybody else does it. And that's why we set up Smartphone Free Childhood, to challenge that. So this actually that's why it's very powerful, because it essentially says, you don't need to buy a smartphone. So it's really nudging parental behaviour, and it's an example of parents and schools coming together. And when we do that, actually change can happen really, really quickly.
I was going to ask on that, actually, Claire, when do you think you're going to see the impact of that? When will a parent look and think, okay, this is actually helping my child if it does?
Well, what's really interesting is that we are seeing the impact of this movement. Increasingly, more children are starting secondary with a simple phone. So we know that that's happening, and it's actually really exciting. I think as we go into September 2025, we're going to see that even more, that impact. And we also have teachers in our community who say to us, you can tell when a child doesn't have a smartphone because it's like they've got a superpower. They can pay attention. They can make eye contact. They can interact with each other. They know how to be bored. They know how to play games, because they're not constantly being pulled into this device that's designed to kind of create these little spikes of dopamine that mean that actually everything else doesn't seem so interesting. So the impact of doing that for children, it's not taking something away. It's actually giving them something. And increasingly, we hear children saying, we don't really want to be the experiment generation. We'd rather not have social media, but we just have to because everyone else does. And that's why this move is so powerful, because it kind of just says all these amazing head teachers have come together and said, you know what, the government's not going to do anything. We don't have time. The tech companies aren't showing signs of doing much. So actually, for these children living their childhoods right now, let's all do this and just say enough is enough. And yeah, it's just really inspiring to see.
Do you think it's going to roll out, starting in Barnet, London Borough of Barnet? Do you think this is going to roll out across London or beyond?
I absolutely think it is, because, we saw just last week, Ealing came together with 70 primary schools going smartphone free. We've seen it at St Albans. We've seen it in places like Bushey, Petersfield, Cambridge more recently. So it's actually really inspiring to see these little clusters of head teachers coming together and doing exactly the same thing. And what we know is that actually when they do that, almost everybody wants to come together. So as I said, I think it's a no-brainer. Smartphones in schools are just not a good combination for such a range of reasons. It's not just focus, it's also, they're a huge safeguarding issue as well, aren't they? We have parents telling us our children are being shown beheading videos at lunchtime. Very hard for schools to police that sort of thing. So, it is a no-brainer. And, increasingly, I think we will absolutely, this is the year that the tide is turning. There's a tipping point. Barnet has shown this is possible. Parents are coming together. It's really exciting. I think this is a year of change, and it's brilliant for children and their childhood.
Okay, we appreciate your time.